Hey, what's up? What's up, everybody? Hello, 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 hello. It is A'Tondra Vinchealle, the keeper of the Mermaid's wisdom, your feminine guide to total health and wellness. And I don't want to be here long. Hey, Jai, how are you? Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I don't want to be long. I'm going to be here for a few minutes. So if you are hopping on, please like and share this video. I was going to try to hold my phone up, but I'm just not going to try to do that. Please like and share this video because I've gotten a lot of questions today. And I just want to go ahead and address a few things. So I'm taking, or have been taking, sort of a semi-break from social media, but I hopped on to ask some questions in this private incubator group that I'm in. And when I hopped on, I noticed that I had a lot of messages and a lot of questions regarding what is happening with the solar eclipse, as well as many of the retrogrades that are scheduled to take place. And so before I actually address the questions, I said, well, let me go on here and see what the conversation is, what's being talked about. Hey there, Master Fe. Thank you for joining me this evening. What the conversation is, what's being talked about, what are people saying? And what I found was a lot of just a lot of fear mongering and a lot of content that would cause people to panic, right? A lot of, be very careful. People are trying to do this and do that to you, and be careful of the retrogrades because you're going to have an attitude, and don't do this and don't do that, and don't run from here, and be careful what you say. Just a whole lot of just, I don't want to call it craziness, but a lot of misinformation without context. So that was what I found on one hand. And then on the other hand, there's, hey, Nifa, hey, Yoni, how are you? Hey, Robert, thank you all so much for joining me this evening. So that's on one hand. So on one hand, you have a lot of be afraid, be very, very, very afraid. And then on the other hand, you have a lot of go out and buy this and buy this and buy this and buy this and buy that and buy this candle and buy that and buy this and go buy this one, and then you've got to do this, and then you turn it upside down, and then you do 3 flips, roll upside down, bust your legs wide open and point your yoni to the moon. I mean, all kinds of just I'm sorry. My husband is over there laughing at me. Hey, Jackie, how are you? Thank you for joining me this evening. But just a lot of just these really elaborate ceremonies and all kinds of things. And so once I went to see what the hi, Cyrenian. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Once I went to go and research what the conversation was, then I decided to answer the question. And I actually wrote a full blog post about it. If you want to go to my website, if you go to themermaidswisdom.com/blog, you'll be able to see the most recent blog post that I wrote. But here is the thing, okay? The way you perceive a thing is the way you will live that thing. So I'm going to say it again, okay? The way that you perceive a thing is the way that you will live that thing. And we have to understand that our perception is really the deductive reasoning that is distilled down from a collection of thoughts. Okay? And these thoughts that we have cause us to have a certain perception about the experiences that we are having. And it also causes us to have certain feelings about the experiences that we are having. And what happens a lot of times is, depending on our perception, we get these feelings. And a lot of times what really is insecurity and paranoia can be confused for intuition. Because, and I said this a few weeks ago, a person can only advise you through the lenses of what he or she has experienced and how they have integrated the reality of that experience. Okay? And so what happens is we watch people and we listen to people and we read their blogs and we read their content and we read their memes and we watch their videos. I mean, you're watching my video now and I totally appreciate your time and attention. At the same time, I always encourage all of my viewers to go and actually research what it is that I am telling you. Now, I will say that a lot of times when I do come on live, it's after me sitting with something and it's through my meditation. And a lot of times what I speak is given to me. Thank you, Master Fe, is given to me by spirit. But at the same time, one of the things that I believe is that spirit will never give me anything that's not verifiable. Oh, thank you, Yoni. Okay. So spirit will never give me anything that's not verifiable, right? So I always encourage people to go and verify what it is that I'm saying. And what I want to tell you about this eclipse and this retrograde is this, okay? People act as if the moon, as if you were here before the moon. They have this tendency to speak and behave in what I feel like is a complete disrespect to the moon and to the wisdom that she brings, right? We have a tendency to act like we know more than the moon, when the moon was here well before many of us were even a forethought in our parents' minds. And what happens with solar eclipses, or what happens when the planets go into retrograde, is the universe is putting a mirror to your face for you to look inside of you and see the things that are inside of you. So a lot of times I will see people post things and they'll say, I apologize for everything that I said last week during retrograde. No, sweetheart, that's not the retrograde. It's just you. You're just rude. It's not the solar eclipse. You're rude. And there's no good, bad, right, or wrong. There's no judgment there, but it is an open invitation for you to sit with yourself and reflect on yourself and take account and responsibility for the things that are going on with you. And so it's very interesting because you will see people and they will say, and Sri Namaste Sri Namaste Moore and Barbara Richard, they talk about this before. They've talked about this several times, but what happens is you have these people, and they'll sit and they'll say, well, Spirit said, and everything that Spirit says to them is negative. Or let me take that back. Everything that Spirit says to them is about the things that produce less than desirable outcomes. Watch out for this person. Watch out for that person. Spirit told me that during this retrograde, people are going to be trying to get you, and they're going to be trying to. And my question, and I had this question even before I had listened to that teaching, but it makes so much sense. My question is, why is it that when Spirit speaks to you during the retrograde or during any time, it's always about what I need to be running from? Because one of the things that you have to understand is that when you're given something, it's given to you, but it's given to you for you first. It's given to you for you first. And then once you sit with it and you integrate with it, then from there, you can make an integrity-based decision about whether or not what was given to you is translatable to everyone else in your community. But it starts with you first. So if you think that negative energy is coming to you because of the eclipse, then my question to you is, then what negative energy, negative, if you want to use that term, what negative energy have you given out? Right? Like if you're afraid that the eclipse is coming, I've got to stay in my house, people are trying to get me, everybody's going to be crazy, there's going to be people out there and they're going to be like trying to bite my blood and bite my life-giving breast and take a bite out of my yoni and, all of this other kind of stuff. And they're going to be like standing next to me and like sucking the energy out of my womb space and, like, okay. How you perceive a thing is how you will live a thing. How you perceive a thing is how you will live a thing. Let me tell you something. For those of you who may not know, my bachelor's degree is in biological and physical sciences with concentrated studies in biochemistry and human metabolism. And I say that not because that necessarily means anything, but I say that because I come from a scientific community and I know that there are a lot of people in my audience who are from a scientific community. So allow me to explain to you what happens to the brain physiologically when you begin to focus on an idea. Okay, when you begin to focus on an idea or a thing or an ideology, this is what happens. Okay, so a lot of times, one of the reasons why we continue to tell the same stories over and over and over and over again is because there is some kind of reward that we receive from telling that story. Okay, so whether we want to admit that publicly or not, again, no judgment, but that is what it is, right? So you continue to tell the story because you receive some kind of reward from that story, right? Whether it's getting people to feel sorry for you, or whether it's getting people to be on your side, or whether it's getting other people to empathize with you, or whatever the situation may be, you continue to tell that story because you get some type of reward for it. Okay, so here's what happens physiologically. So you tell this story and you receive this reward, and so your reward centers are activated in your brain. And what happens is your brain will release a shot of dopamine into your system. Okay. Now, dopamine is a great hormone. The challenge with the dopamine, though, is that dopamine is very addictive. And on one hand, it can produce some very desirable results, because what dopamine does is it causes the prefrontal cortex of the brain to focus on the behaviors that produce that outcome. Okay, so one of the reasons why small children tend to get, if you put them in some type of sport or some type of activity, music or whatever, they tend to get really good at it the more you praise them, because when you praise them, they receive that dopamine. And so then their prefrontal cortex now begins to focus on that behavior. And so if the brain says, if I make that free throw, or if I make that 3-point, or if I can play that sound on the keyboard, I get praise, I get this hormone, then it causes the child to want to practice, to love to practice, to enjoy the practice of that thing. And so then through the practice of that thing, they develop the skills, and they get better and better and better and better and better, because they have so much experience with it, because they practice it so much, right? So in that situation, it produces a desirable outcome. However, on the other hand, if we are continuing to tell these stories that are connected to energies that have less than a desirable outcome, then our brain does the same thing. It will cause the prefrontal cortex to focus on the behaviors that produce that positive result, that positive energy. And so, and when I say positive, you have to understand that physiologically, what positive means is you get the desired result. Okay, so you may be telling a story that has less than desirable results, but because you're receiving the dopamine, the brain sees that as a positive. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense before I move forward. I know it was a lot. I have a tendency to kind of do that before I get to the point, but it's who I am, and I just own that. So if that makes sense to you, just let me know. The fact that you could be telling a story that's connected to an energy that gives you less than desirable results, but because it's producing this dopamine, this reward hormone in your brain, the brain sees that as a positive result, and so the brain will begin to focus on the behaviors that produce that dopamine. So okay, let's get back to the retrogrades, and let's get back to the eclipses. So if you were continuing to tell this story about how the retrogrades are going to cause you to be irritable, about how the retrogrades are going to cause everybody to hate you, about how the solar eclipse is going to bring out like all of these crazies and all of this crazy energy that's going to cause you to go crazy. So you tell the story, and then you post it on social media. And somebody goes and they like it. And then somebody else goes and they comment and they say, yes, girl, yes, you are telling the truth. I can just feel my yoni just being drawn right now. And I'm like, okay, sweetheart. All right. Whatever works for you, what you do in your private time is none of my business. But they're agreeing with you. Right? So you're receiving this dopamine, and then what happens? Physiologically, your brain is now focused on trying to get that behavior, because here's what happens. If you tell this story and then you meet somebody who attempts to suck the energy from you, then even though that's a less than desirable result energetically, your brain wants the dopamine, right? So in a weird way, it feels good that this less than desirable thing has happened to you, because now that proves your point, and proving your point feeds your ego, and that helps get you more dopamine, and that helps you feel good. That helps you feel better. And so if your brain is focused on getting this result, then energetically, your energy is going to be focused on getting that result. And the answer from the universe is always yes. So if your idea of the retrogrades is people are going to piss me off, then the universe says yes. And your brain says yes, right? And so now your brain creates this environment where you're more irritable. Okay, so then somebody steps in front of you at the grocery store and boom, you go off. Pow, you've gone off on them, and your fingers all in the air and you're mad and you're hot and and then you come to Facebook and you say, see, that's what I'm talking about. This goddamn retrograde is coming to get all of us. This lady just stood in front of me at the store and I told her, not today. It's the retrograde. You better be glad, right? But it feeds that. It feeds that because how you perceive a thing is how you live the thing. So sis, if you are having a bad attitude because of the retrograde, it's not the retrograde, it's you. You just have a bad attitude. If you cussed out your husband because of the solar eclipse, it's not the eclipse. I'm sorry. Like, okay, let's do this. Let's be honest. Does the moon really have time? Like grandmother moon is up there like, let me see who I can piss off today. Because clearly, of all of the wonderful things that I have to do in the universe, I have absolutely nothing else to do right now but to try to figure out how I can screw up your relationship. I have absolutely nothing else to do with my time in my life right now than to figure out how I can get somebody to cuss you out at the red light. I have nothing else to do with my time right now but to figure out, like, are you serious? Seriously. Like, for real. And it stems from this idea that everything in the universe is inherently against you. You know, like the universe is like, get her, go, get her. Throw a rock out there. And 5, 4, 3, 2, rock. But seriously, and you have to evaluate the level of audacity and the level of arrogance on your part to believe that you are so different that the universe, that the grandmother moon would purposefully single you out, right? So that they could like bleed you of all that you have. Another thing that I wanted to touch on really quickly before I hopped off was this idea of ritual. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, so we're gonna go back to my degree. So I'm trained as a researcher. So what happens a lot of times is it becomes a natural thing. When I see things, I look for patterns and my brain will sort of interpret this data. And I'm like, you know, it's so funny because I think a lot of people on my social media feed know that. But like my entire social media audience, a lot of times, my social media, hey there, Alicia, thank you for joining me. Hey there, Convic, the God. Hey there, how are you? Asif and hey sis, what's up? Oh, Kim Trees, hey, how are you? So, a lot of like and it's something that I have to watch myself with, because if I'm not careful, like I can immediately pop out of my womb space. So I have to remember that. But I watch people and I watch patterns, and So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing people who have never had a meditation practice, who have never had a ritual practice, who have never had any of these things. And then all of a sudden, now they want to do these elaborate rituals. I had a lot of those questions in my inbox today. What color candle should I buy? What kind of incense should I buy? I've got some leaves in my backyard. Should I crush them up and burn them? I read somewhere on YouTube that I should like take, cat urine and, pour it in the cracks of my driveway and sprinkle rose petals and then burn ashes of the growing phoenix and mix it up in breast milk from a Cambodian woman. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But like you see this, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, sis, you don't even have a meditation practice. You don't even have a meditation practice. How is it that you think that because the moon is now doing all of these eclipsey things and all of this stuff is happening, that all of a sudden you are ready for the energetics that are associated with these elaborate ceremonies? Like how there's a talk that I give. There's a talk that I give, and it's the talk that I'm hired for the most when I do public speaking. It's called the RPI of being a healthy woman. The RPI of being a healthy woman. And one of the things that I talk about in that talk is P for preparation. And I use this analogy of when, I first started training. I first started personal training before I started the Mermaid's Wisdom. And I would have people who would hire me or would inquire about hiring me. But they would say, oh, I've got this New Year's resolution. And what that means is I'm going to drop 50 pounds in 1 month. And I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. And I'm only going to eat salads. And they make all of these crazy plans. And you don't even own a pair of tennis shoes. You make all of these plans. And you don't even own a pair of workout tights. Okay. Hey, Carmen, how are you, beautiful? Carmen is so awesome and amazing. And if you're not following her, like, you should follow her. Like, her and Kim Treese. But Kim Treese is on here as Rasé. But they are such beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sisters. Like, beautiful and powerful and magical and amazing sisters. But yeah, so they would call me and they would have all of these plans and they had made no preparations whatsoever. And then what happens is you make these plans, you make these elaborate plans, and then you're trying to prepare while you're trying to implement the plan that you didn't prepare for all at the same time. And so what happens is you get overwhelmed and then eventually you quit. And I would see this all the time when I was working in the gyms. It happened all the time. And to me, that is analogous to all of these people who I see who are on Facebook, Instagram saying, hey, can you send me rituals? Hey, can you send me, this? Can you tell me? No, sis. No. Because let me explain something to you, sweetheart. There is a responsibility, okay, that comes with that comes with modalities and information. Okay? A lot of people want the privilege. They want the privileges, but they don't want to understand the responsibility. Right? Because understand that the way that this works in this thing called life, is that, yes, everything is for you first, right? Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Everything is for you first. However, you also have to understand that as a human being who lives amongst other human beings, you are responsible for the energetic that you carry around other human beings, because in most situations, the decisions that we make and the behaviors that we have are informed upon by the people who we spend the most time with. And so you must understand that your energetic, that essence of you, has influence in the communities that you find yourself in. And so when you start accessing rituals, practices, without having the foundational knowledge that is necessary to own the responsibility that is associated with that practice or with that modality or with that ritual, then you put yourself at a huge disadvantage, because nothing that you will ever do will ever stick. Greetings, sister. How are you? Nothing that you do will ever stick. And what I find a lot of times when there are eclipses and retrogrades is that people who have never had a practice, who've never done rituals, who've never done that, they want to get in this thing. They get into it, and then they do it for the moon, for the eclipse, and then they'll do it for the retrogrades. And then once that's over, then they put it down. And I'm going to tell you something that my one of my other teachers, Reverend Michaela Rena, told me when I learned tarot from her. She said, once you pick up the tarot cards, once you open the door, you become responsible for that. Hey, Pam. You become responsible for that. Once you open the door, you become responsible for that. And it's not just a situation where you can pick it up and put it down when you want to. There's a blog that I'm going to write. I've already written it down on paper. I just have not posted it on my blog yet. But it's called "Your Yoni is Not Your Side Chick." You know, something Sri Namaste mentioned at our retreat. Your yoni is not your side chick. And in the spirit of that, I would like to venture off and say that your practices and your rituals, these things are not your side chick. Okay? I saw a meme the other day that said Jesus did not die for you to be a side chick. Like these practices are not your side chick. You can't just pick her up and put her down whenever you feel like it. Right? And some of you who will watch this are side chicks. Now watch this, because, you know, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Again, no judgment. Please understand. There's no judgment. How you perceive a thing is how you live a thing. And I'm not saying that correlation equals causation. I'm not saying that correlation equals causation. What I am saying, though, is that if you are a side chick, one of the things that you have to, if you no longer want to be a side chick, because some women like being side chicks, and that's okay, you know, if that's how you want to live your life, it's totally fine. But if you no longer want to be a side chick, then you have to begin to evaluate who all your side chicks are. whether that is your womb space, your moon time, your rituals, your prayers, your meditations. You have to begin to evaluate who your side chicks are. Okay? And these things are not a side chick. These things come with a responsibility. They come with great, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful and amazing privileges. Beautiful and amazing privileges. I'll give you an example. A lot of my sister muses and I went to the Luminosity retreat last week in Austin, Texas with Sri Namaste Moore and Baba Richard. And the wisdom and the knowledge and the activation that we received comes with a responsibility. And there was absolutely no way that any of us could have left that retreat the same woman. There's no way. That would have been completely irresponsible and totally disrespectful. Totally disrespectful. And, you know, we're in a sacred container, you know, all of us. And we are supporting each other and holding each other accountable for the things that we have learned, because we understand that what we have learned in the way of modalities, in the way of rituals, in the way of energetic is so much more than just us. And so there's a responsibility that comes with that. And the beautiful energy and the beautiful activation we received comes with a beautiful set of privileges. Beautiful set of privileges. But in order to be able to fully access those privileges, we must be willing to take the responsibility that comes with what we received. Okay, so A'Tondra, so what are you saying about my ritual? Okay, sis, if you have not had a consistent meditation practice, a consistent prayer practice, a consistent ritual practice, it would probably not be in your absolute best interest for you to attempt to begin an elaborate set of rituals at this time just because of the moon and the retrogrades. And that might not be something that everybody wants to hear, right? Because everybody wants to feel connected to all of that. And social media has taken womb work and women's work and wellness work and energetics and has made it popular. It's become pop culture. It's the cool thing now to call yourself a witch. People don't even understand the responsibility that comes along with calling yourself a witch. Oh, I'm a witch. I'm a witch. Are you, sweetheart? Are you witch? Are you a witch? Because if you're a witch, then you have to be willing to take what witches take, and you have to be willing to do what witches do, and you have to be willing to deal with what witches deal with, and you have to be willing to understand what witches understand, and you have to be willing to see what witches see, and you have to be willing to integrate and interpret what witches integrate and interpret. Are you ready for that? Because if you're not, then you don't need to do the cool thing and call yourself a witch. I'm a priestess. Are you? Are you a priestess, sis? Are you a priestess? Are you a priestess? Okay. Because a priestess is a position of responsibility. It's not a position of popularity. It's a position of responsibility. Okay, because when you say you're a priestess, you not only weep for yourself, but you weep for your world. You weep for the collective, right? You now are praying and meditating and performing ritual, not only for yourself, but for the collective. There is an energetic responsibility that comes with being a priestess. If you want to call yourself, my name is Chantel the Priestess Jackson. I ain't your mama, Millicent. Okay. Are you willing to do what priestesses do? Are you willing to go where priestesses go? Are you willing to study the way priestesses study? Because once you become a priestess, it is a lifetime commitment, and there is a lifetime study, and there is a lifetime responsibility and a lifetime energetic that is associated with that. Are you a priestess, sis? Are you a priestess? Let me tell you something about life, and let me tell you something about me. I have a private group called the Sisters of the Mermaid's Lair. Okay. Right now, the only thing I request to be addressed by, okay, the only thing I request to be addressed by in that group is Sister A'Tondra or Big Sister A'Tondra. If you go and you look at my resume, okay, understand me, okay, because I am college educated, I am also self-educated, and I have been and am currently being educated and nurtured by priestesses and direct reflections of source. Okay. So in all of that education right now, at this stage in my development, at this stage in my being, the only thing I allow or request myself to be referred to as is Sister A'Tondra or Big Sister A'Tondra. Why? Because in this place and space that I am in right now in my life, okay, and in my work, that is the level of responsibility that I know for a fact without a shadow of a doubt that I can own up to, that I can step into, that I can inhabit, that I can walk in, regardless of what you see on my resume. Okay? Because my resume is long. If I wanted to go there, my resume is no joke. Okay? I used to see dead people when I was like 5. Okay? My resume is long. Okay? So we get caught up because, well, sis, you know, you can't be talking to me because, you know, I'm Reiki level 3 certified and I took this training and I went to Tony Robbins seminar and I got this and I got. So you clearly cannot be talking to me. Sis, I'm talking to you. Because education does not always directly lead to an elevation of responsibility. Your education does not automatically entitle you to an elevation in responsibility. I'm going to say that again for the seats in the back. Your education does not automatically entitle you to an elevation in your responsibility. And so when you look for all of these rituals because they sound cool, right? And they make great conversation, right? Yes, because on the day of the solar eclipse, I inserted my jade Yoni egg and I went out in my red tent in the backyard and I opened it up and I pressed my Yoni up to the womb and there was sage and palo santo and there were candles burning and I released all of my intentions in the fire and I called upon the Phoenix goddess and she came in and spoke through me and there were roses and there were flowers and we were all there and then we cut our fingers and we made a blood pact. Like, it makes for really, really good conversation, right? Like, it makes for like really interesting conversation. But does it lead to a real and actual transformation? Right? Because if these retrogrades and the solar eclipses, if they do anything, they open up an opportunity right? They are an invitation for you to experience the process of what real transformation is for you. Hey there, Linda. Thank you for joining me this evening. That's what they are. She said mess around and evoke a pigeon in your body. Right? So if you don't have a practice and you don't have a mentor who is willing to hold your hand every step of the way for these elaborate moon ceremonies that you want to participate in, or these elaborate rituals for the retrograde that you want to do, it would best serve you if you focus on becoming consistent with the practices you currently have now. Whether that is prayers, okay, whether that is meditation, whether that is affirmations, speaking affirmations, those kinds of things, right? Start with being consistent with what is currently available to you now. I think Kim Treese, she's on here as Rasé C. Wright. I think she did a video just the other day about using what was available to you or something like that. I think she just did something like that not too long ago, about using what is already available for you. Using what is already available for you. You want to go out and you want to find all of these exotic herbs. So now, you're ordering Cambodian breast milk from Amazon and, the, unicorn tears in a glass bottle. And, oh, thank you, Linda. And, all of this stuff. And magic cauldrons and fairy feathers and all of this kind of stuff. You're ordering all of these, crazy things. And let me not say crazy, right? But I mean, you're ordering all of these things. You don't even know how to use them. You're making up, you're grabbing spells from YouTube. Y'all gonna learn about them YouTube spells. Yeah, I'll leave that one for another day. But you're grabbing spells from YouTube and, you're going in. Has anybody seen the movie, the Chucky movies? Child's Play, the Chucky with the doll, right? And so now you got your unicorn tears and your fairy piss, and you're in the middle of your living room with a candle going, Adoe Dewey Dembola, give me the power, I beg of you, and then Chucky comes out of the closet and he's like, and then what do? You jump right on Facebook and say, I told y'all the retrogrades make people crazy. Anyway, you want to do all this elaborate stuff. And here's what it really is. Here's what it really is. Watch this. Watch this. And this is something that I talk about when I do that talk, the RPI of being a healthy woman, or the RPI of giving yourself permission to be a healthy woman. As long as you can make it inaccessible to you, you don't ever have to own the responsibility for being consistent. Okay. Right? Because as long as you can only get diamond encrusted Pegasus balls in the third quarter of the year, on the 5th day of the second month after 5 p.m., and they must be ordered from Denmark within a 2-hour window, right? Like as long as that's the only way that you can get it, you don't really ever have to be responsible for being consistent with the practice. Because you can always come back and say, well, you know, I'm fresh out of fairy piss. You know, I thought I had some unicorn tears left, but I don't. And that African herb, you know, Africa, because clearly, you know, Africa is only one country. Another conversation for another time. That African herb, you know, you can only get it in the wintertime. And, you know, as long as you can make it inaccessible and complicated, you don't ever have to own the responsibility for being consistent with your practice. And what we don't realize is that when we do this, when we go on these missions for these elaborate things, to do these elaborate rituals and to do these elaborate ceremonies, subconsciously what you're saying is, I don't really want to do this. I'm looking for every way possible to not have to be responsible for being consistent at this once the retrograde is over or once the solar eclipse is over. So I'm going to make it as magical and as elaborate and as esoteric as I possibly can, so that when I do it this one time, I don't ever have to do it again because the materials are inaccessible to me. And no judgment, but that's just what it is. That's just what it is. It's like when I was in college, and sometimes when I really didn't feel like studying, but I needed to study, right? I had to have the right tea with the right amount of honey in the right teacup, because it had to be in a specific teacup. I had to sit at a specific space. Greeting Chanel, at a specific time. My laptop had to be on a specific amount of charge. My books had to be set up. And if I didn't have this specific pen, I had this entire elaborate ritual that I had put myself through to prepare myself to study, when the fact of the matter is, I really just didn't feel like studying. I didn't want to study. And so I did all the things to make it as ritualistic and as elaborate as possible, because then if I couldn't find my pen, hot dog it, guess that paper's not being written today. Dag nabbit. I really needed that pen. That's the paper writing pen. That's my pen for writing papers. It was blessed and ordained by the paper writing goddess herself, and I integrated with that pen, and it is only through that pen that I may receive from the goddess of written papers my history project. When again, the fact of the matter is, I just didn't want to study. And that's what happens a lot of times with these rituals for the moon and for this and for this and for this. You don't really want to be consistent, right? And it's okay if you go ahead and admit that. It's not wrong, right? So for those who are looking for rituals and candles and this and this and this and this, start with what you have in your house. Start with just spending 3 minutes with yourself in the morning. Start with that. One minute for gratefulness. 1 minute for sending love to yourself. And 1 minute for sending love to the people in your home and everybody else who you come in contact with. Just 3 minutes. Start with that. Start with doing that once a day. Even in the midst of the retrograde, even in the midst of the full moon, even in the midst of everything. Start with that. right? I had to check myself today, because yesterday I noticed that I was becoming really nitpicky about everything. Okay. You didn't, why didn't you do, and I kept catching myself. I didn't really sit with what was happening yesterday. You can only get it in the second quarter of the year, in the second month, on the second day after 5 o'clock, between a 2-hour window. That's the only time that you can get that. So when I get that, I will make sure to send you some. So earlier I was speaking with my daughter today, and I realized that I was on the verge of becoming nitpicky. And I stopped. And I had to sit with myself. I said, okay, A'Tondra, what is this? What is this? You know what this is. This is the conversation that I'm having with me. I sat down, okay? I did my hard breaths. I sat down, I relaxed my shoulders. Okay. What is this? What is happening? Hey there, how are you? What is happening? You know what's happening? You are in the third phase of your feminine cycle. Okay, so I'm in the luteal stage. Okay. The hormones that are released during this stage are really, really good for editing and proofreading. What does that mean? That means that I may, watch this, I may have a tendency, if I'm not owning up to me and my responsibility, I may have the tendency to find fault right now with everything that I see, because right now my brain wants to proofread everything. My brain wants to edit everything. Okay, A'Tondra, we are here. What do we do? What do we do, A'Tondra? What do we do? Okay. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. Okay. Okay. Go back to the nest. Okay. And if you don't know what the nest is, that is in the School of Feminine Transformation, run by Sri Namaste Moore. Okay. So I think it's bit.ly/join soft if you want to know what the School of Transformation is. But this is what I'm telling myself. Okay. Be quiet. Go back to the nest. Be quiet. Okay. So watch this. Just watch this. Okay. Watch this flow. Watch this process. And I want you to watch the owning of responsibility for myself. Okay. So watch this. Okay. All right. I'm quiet. My 15-year-old comes home from his friend's house. He's decided that he wants to, this was a few weeks back, he's decided that he no longer wants to go to private school. We're going to let him have a stab at public school, right? So he comes back from his friend's house and he's like, Mom, these are the things that they told me to watch out for. Immediately, I wanted to jump into, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you ask this? But what about this? And what about this? And who's about that? And what about this? And what are you going to do about this? And what are you going to do about that person? I saw it. Why? Because I was prepared. Why? Because I educated myself. Why? Because that was important to me, and I allowed what I educated myself to be integrated within me, so that when it came up, I could recognize it and identify it and then go in and correct it. Do you understand what's happening here? Okay, this is the part of owning the responsibility for yourself. And so I see it, right? And I feel it. And what do? I go back to my hard breath. I go back to my hard breath. Okay, A'Tondra, you know what this is. Okay? we're not going to do this today. Because this does not serve you, and this does not serve him, and this does not serve your household, okay? We're just going to smile and nod. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to smile and nod. And that's what I did. Okay? So watch this. This is in the midst of being in that third phase of my feminine cycle, in the midst of what's going on with this eclipse, in the midst of what's going on with all of the retrogrades that are happening and coming, okay? In the midst of all that, I took full responsibility for my own behavior. And it did not take me lighting a candle. It did not take me going and standing in front of the moon. It did not take me getting, getting all of these fancy artifacts and all of these exotic herbs. It didn't take any of that. All it took was for me to recognize what was happening because I had studied. Okay, so it took for me to recognize what was happening and then to make a cognizant, and an intuitive decision, because I went from cognitive to being cognizant to saying, well, my brain wants to talk about this, and we really should talk about this because I really have concerns, and I should make you explain it all to me, and understanding that that's not how the masculine works. So it took going from all of that to drop back down to womb space. Okay, we're going to smile and we're going to nod. Because everything is going to be okay. And everything that is presenting itself so that it can serve you. You understand? So what I'm saying is that if you know that you have certain concerns, okay, you know that you exhibit certain behaviors, and you really feel that the solar eclipse and the retrogrades will affect you on some level, then it becomes your responsibility to recognize those patterns, to understand those patterns, and then begin to do the work that's necessary to transform yourself out of those patterns. And my dear, 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 dear sacred sister, that does not require an elaborate ritual. All it requires is an openness and a willingness to accept responsibility. There is a saying that says that the teacher will appear when the student is ready. If you don't have access to the elaborate rituals yet, it's because you're not ready. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. And it's not anything against you. You're not ready. And it's okay. It's okay. Because when you are, and that's what you desire, that teacher will appear for you. And the teacher will appear for you, and it will be accessible to you because you're ready. That's how it works. Okay? So, if you want, you can check out my blog. I give some very specific tools and strategies for what to do during this time. You can find that at www.themermaidswisdom.com/blog. If somebody could type that in for me, that would be great. I'd really appreciate that. Again, it's www.themermaids with an S, themermaidswisdom.com/blog. And I've got 9 specific things there. that you can do during this time that don't require a whole lot of elaborate ritual, and they don't require a whole lot of time. They just require you to be willing to be open, and available to what is there for you with the use of what it is that you already have. Thank you, sister. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay. So with that being said, ladies, and I think I had a couple of gentlemen on here, I am out of so that means it's time for me to go. Okay. I love you all. And I wish you all of the love and pleasure and passion and joy and peace that you could ever want and need, and all that you can receive and all that you can stand. Okay? I love you all. Bye-bye.